So I'm going to give you a number here which is going to be very surprising to you, which is the federal government has 3 years to audit your return. Most of you are probably sitting there scratching your heads going, I thought it was 7 years, because for some reason the number bounces around that you should keep your tax records for 7 years. The real truth is that the federal government only has 3 years to audit your return in most circumstances, assuming you're a law-abiding citizen and have declared all your income and filed on time, etc. They only have 3 years. The way that applies is the 3 years starts from the day that you file your return. So let's assume that, here's an example, let's assume that you filed your 2011 tax return on time by April 15th, 2012. That's when the 3-year clock starts ticking. So around April 15th, 2015, you can discard the supporting papers, which means that when we get off the phone, you could probably walk over to your shredder and get rid of a lot of paper. Anything from 2011 and before is really kind of a moot point. So now what should you go ahead and shred? Some people like to keep the actual tax return for as long as they feel like holding on to it. And, I suppose that's cool, although most of the time when you have to provide a tax return, like if you're, trying to buy a co-op or something, they really only need the previous 2 years' worth of tax returns. I don't think anyone's ever going to ask you for more than 3 years' worth of tax returns. But if you feel most comfortable holding on to the actual tax return for longer, go ahead. But what I'm talking about discarding are all the papers that you have been saving to support the tax deductions, to support the income, et cetera. Those things can really be gone after 3 years because the government isn't going to ask you for them anymore. So let's move on to the next question, bills and receipts. And this is, where the panic sets in and people go, don't I have to save that? So let's start with bills and receipts that support a tax deduction. You should save those and because you need them when you file your taxes. And then they become part of your tax papers and the 3-year rule applies. The next one is save bills and receipts that document an increase in your home's cost basis. So you pay a certain amount for your house or for your apartment, and later on, years from now, when you sell that, you want to be able to show this is the profit I made or the loss I took on this home. So you'll want to know what did this home cost. So it's not just what you spent on it, it's also money that you put into it. So that would be home improvements or things like large appliances, dishwashers, air conditioners, stoves. So those bills and receipts that document an increase in your home's cost basis, you want to save. You also want to save receipts for items you might return. In most cases, that's probably going to be clothing that still has the tags on it. So hold on to those receipts until you've used the item and know for sure that you want to keep it. You want to save receipts for items that are still under warranty, because if you do have to, for some reason, return that item because it's not working and it's still under warranty, you do want proof of when you purchased it. And then the bottom line is all other receipts and bills can be discarded. Let's talk about financial statements, another point of panic for a lot of people. Most of the time you do not need to save any financial statements, and I'll give you the exceptions here. You should save bank statements for business bank accounts. You should save confirmations of investment purchases and sales, as you'll need these to compute your taxable gain in the year of sale. This is very similar to the idea of documenting the cost basis for your house. Let's say you buy a stock for $100, sell it a few years later for $120. You only have to pay a tax on the $20 profit. But what if you can't prove that you paid $100 for that? The government is going to get a 1099 showing that you made a sale of $120, and they're going to want you to pay tax on the whole $120. So you need to have documentation in your back pocket that, no, I only paid $100 for it. So whenever you make investment purchases, stocks, bonds, any other kinds of investments, you want to hold out to those confirmations so that when you sell it, you can match those up and know how to declare that. If you are over 70, then you want to save your year-end IRA statements. You don't need them throughout the year. You just need the year-end one, because if you're over 70 and a half, you need to start taking what's called a required minimum distribution, and that is always based on what was the value on December 31st of your IRA the previous year. So you want to hold on to that. All other statements can be discarded. So I'm going to move on to what to shred, because before you start throwing anything away, you should know what am I really allowed to just put in the garbage and what should I really be putting through the shredder. First of all, we're all worried about identity theft. So anything with an account number on it or your Social Security number on it, which will be in every page of your tax return, that needs to be shredded because you don't want those documents falling into anyone else's hand and stealing your identity. Also, any document containing personal information. Another thing that you should also shred would be credit card offers. So if you get a piece of mail that says that you have been pre-approved for a credit card, if you just throw that in the recycling or in the garbage, somebody could get hold of that and then apply for credit under your name and change your address, and all sorts of mayhem can occur. So if you get any of those, pull out the part that's got the credit card offer itself with the application with your name, put that through the shredder. The rest of it you can just put in the recycling. So except for those things, all other papers, I think, can be recycled. So let's talk about important papers to keep. So these are all fairly official papers: birth certificate, adoption papers, marriage licenses, divorce decrees, death certificates, citizenship papers, military discharge papers, wills, living wills, power of attorney. What I recommend is that you take these kinds of documents, keep them in a very, very safe place, like a safe deposit box, and that you keep photocopies of them at home, because sometimes you'll be asked to submit one of them, and you don't necessarily need the original. So if you have the photocopies at home, you can just submit the photocopy.